I was a kid in my head.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to open it up like that. And here we go.
Yay.
Hang on. Okay. So we are live on Facebook. Let me allow people time to get in. Let me pull it up on the phone so I can see what's happening and make sure that everything's copacetic. And oop, let's see. Okay. So we have 5 divine feminines on today, all of different, attributes, so and it just happened that way, I mean, I didn't like plan it. Morgan usually does the scheduling. She's the producer. I just show up. She kind of like has this knack for like continuity and cohesiveness of, it's weird, and it never happens with me. But then when I scheduled everything, I was like, whoa, man, there's like 5 ladies on, and they all got different things. I mean, we started with quantum entrepreneurship with Wanda a while ago, and we're going to get into the very unique stuff that you do. And we're going to end up with yoni steams at the 8:30 tonight with Yvette Goulet.
Sweet.
Yoni steams, yoni eggs. I'm like, whoa, she's an old friend of mine, and so that'll be interesting. All right, let me just share this to 10 of the associate groups, and then we'll get started. We've got already 20 people here. Welcome, everybody. Sorry, we're running behind schedule. We're going to be caught up after this one. And so 5 to 10 minutes after this show's over, we're going to have Maya Maticular. I hope I said that right. I'm so known for destroying names, but I can say Julie Dhara Roberts, who's a friend of mine who I met last year, and we have some mutual friends as well, including Hung Wen, the dragon lady. But Julie is one of those, and most of them, not taking anything away from the guys at all, but most of these folks that have been doing this work for so long, many of them in anonymity, without a lot of exposure, starting to come out. You went to school studying aerospace engineering. You were designing aircraft as a young, strange child. But you also have a whole bunch of other stuff you bring to the table, and we can cover whatever you want to. I know you want to open it up with something. I'm going to turn this over to you in just a second, but I just want to say that not only do you do some of the more typical, I don't say typical because that doesn't even sound right, typical in our community, grid work, energy transformation, working with sacred sites. You also have a quantum family, which, based on the last discussion we have and what I know about you, a couple of discussions actually, uh the divine feminine, you're like your family's like a microcosm of what's occurring, you know so
Mm.
the divine feminine with the support of the divine masculine. You've got these quantum children, who, like, are totally helping to evolve the landscape. So I just want to kind of give that intro, and I want to say thank you for coming and on such short notice, and honor us with your presence. But where did you want to start today?
Uh, so one of the things I do is do sound codes. So I wanted to start us in the unified field without words, with sound.
Okay.
So anyone that's live watching, if you want to chillax and sit back in your chair, and you can even close your eyes, and I'll just tune us in. It's a do re mi scale, which it'll center us in the, some people call it the, your light column, your ascension column, your chakra column. It'll bring us into the one, into the
Now,
zone.
what is this instrument?
Thing.
Yeah,
I searched long and hard for this. It's a chimey thing
the
that I use
thing.
with
Oh, I forgot. You're from Boston, so we're gonna have to say the thing. The thing. What thing are you
I,
talking about? The first thing or the second thing?
is
All
that a
right,
Boston thing?
that's a Boston thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm so
the
steep.
guy.
Just
Did you
like
talk to the guy and talk to him about the thing? I'm just kidding. Go ahead. I'm
I
sorry.
found somebody built this off Vancouver Island, BC, but I
Mm,
searched for it for years because I. But anyway, here it is. It'll
right on.
introduce itself.
Okay. Mm. Hmm. Well, that's a mic drop. There's a lot of a lot to be said for what you just did. Uh, sound is so important. So I want to ask you something real.
So after I did a bunch of engineering, go ahead. I was gonna say I'm a
No,
yoga teacher for 20 years too. So like
oh,
you can't
you.
start an experience without like getting to,
I got you.
I do group work, so you gotta set the field.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, oh, echo. So what is the do re mi fa sol la ti do, right? I mean, I don't I don't understand all the music and everything, but I know there's some kind of significance to that, isn't there? I mean, to that scale, is that like a like a copy? Everything's copied off of that basic scale, in the vibrational field. Or do you know?
Yeah, I mean it's the code of life. It
Mm,
shows up in the musical scale. It shows up in the rainbow spectrum. It shows up in
mm.
our chakra field. It shows
Okay.
up lots of
Do,
places.
re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
So
So
you could
there's
like,
8.
in a simplistic way, you can say that
Yeah.
the root do is the root chakra,
Mm.
and then they go up from that.
No wonder that one's still vibrating. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to be bad today. So yeah. So that the importance of sound. Now you say you do sound, toning, sound healing,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
sound alignment. I mean, I don't even know what this would be called, but what can you tell us about that?
Lots of things.
Yeah.
It's interesting when I tuned in to what we should talk about. What I like, there's so many things you and I could talk about for 40 hours and we'd still be going, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be a really long answer to that. But what came in when I was tuning in to what to share to the Soulogy community today was the Venus codes, like what my gate work that's happening right now. And since the end of last year, maybe since the equinox into now, is like the planet Venus is doing a lot of things. And maybe we'll talk about that next. But like the sound codes. So there's there's a lot of Venusian energy with sound healing and like the Hathors and that aspect that comes through. And many cultures, like if you go to the Egyptian culture, they would have like the sound chambers and sound healing, sound temples. One of the things that I've brought through, and it's time again for me to teach another round for my community, is the Sanskrit alphabet. And if you go to the Hindu, like the sound codes, the Sanskrit language is called the Varnamala, or they call them little matrikas, little mothers. And so the 50 characters of the Sanskrit language are, each one is associated with a petal of the chakra system. So by tuning and like just speaking, like Sanskrit is a vibrational language, I feel like for our modern time, it's one of those things that is most, let's say, palatable, like easily accessible. Like we've lost a lot of the direct translations to the mystery schools, maybe from some of the ancient cultures, but the Sanskrit one, like that's been more passed down to the modern day, if that makes sense. So even when, if you speak, like if you're a yoga instructor and you speak Adho Mukha Svanasana, like downward facing dog, it's like it's pinging different petals of your chakra system. So there's like so much to the sound thing, and then you don't have to be in any of those lineages. You could be with.
It's universal. It's
Yeah,
true.
you could go to like a shaman in Peru, and they're gonna be doing
so
sound.
it incorporates like everything that because if you think about it, it would only make sense. I mean, the alphabets came from sound.
Yeah, if you go to the Bible, first there was the word, and the word, like, it's a creation space. Like the sound codes are creation space, but they're like as part of the ascension, light codes and sound codes come through together. Does that make sense? In the geometries and.
Well, yeah, because so you were saying that all the things it's associated with, so it's color, chakras, color, of course, sound, and then I guess you start to get into the word, the lyrical, the the sounds, like the phonetics and all that. Now, I was going to ask you, so like how do you utilize sound in your own experience? I mean, before you get in front of groups, I mean, how do you
Yeah.
utilize that?
Well, because we're all creator beings. Your words create every word you speak, every thought. It's like a constant moment by moment, staying in the flow of life. That's why I said at first, the code of life. It's like you're creating your reality with each and every word and each and every thought.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. And then the thoughts, I guess when you get down to it, it's some, whatever, etheric, quasi etheric, literal, physical, the thoughts must carry tones as well. Really, you would
yeah,
think.
they're in the vibratory field.
Yeah.
So you can think of it. You ever a Boy Scout? I was a Girl Scout. Those mess kit when you're camping,
No, I
and
was a
the
hoodlum.
yeah, you were.
I
All
tried to
right,
go to the Boy
but you've
Scouts and they told me to cut my hair and I said no. I'm
all
just kidding.
right, but you've maybe been camping. I'm just talking about the collapsible camping cups that go flat,
Oh yeah.
but that lift
Hmm.
up, right? So if you think of those as rings around,
Okay.
like in each,
Yeah.
so your field is these like interlocking rings of different vibration. Is even what people talk about is like, the 3D, 4D, like I see them as like almost concentric rings, or like states of awareness, frequency bands. And you, as high as, as high as you want to go up and see from that field. Does that make sense? Like it's all like,
Yeah, I think
so
that's a
if
great.
you go through, and we were talking about how it shows up around the planet in these ancient cultures, like the code of life is also the 5 elements, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're in the shaman, so it's the earth, water,
Yeah.
fire, air, ether. If you're in the Ayurvedic system, which I've studied pretty extensively, or you could go to like the shaman, the Mayan
And you
shaman.
studied a lot of stuff, man, from designing airplanes. And I know you have you're really connected to, because your post. I mean, I don't read a lot of posts, but I like reading your posts because they're educational to me. They like explain the relationship between the cosmos and in a way that I don't see a lot of. It's almost like a scientific thing.
I
But I
feel
wanted to
like
ask you about the tones.
one of my
It
roles is
is.
to explain the science in a way that's like really digestible to the spirit
Yeah.
community.
Well, you do a good job of it, at least from my opinion.
Thank you.
You do a great job of it. Now, I want to ask you, and I don't know if you know the answer, but um, these tones that we receive, I started receiving tones around the time Morgan came into my life, and I don't really understand. I don't. They don't come with words.
Yeah.
They come at synchronistic times, like when truth is being spoken to me, or maybe from me, or something's coming. But I do have and I'm sure I'm just saying this just as an example, just so we can have a little backdrop. But I can understand. I do see the different types of tones or combination of tones, and I know they're carrying different messages or whatever you call it. Do you know anything about the relationship of the tones that so many people receive?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we're all becoming more and more clairaudient. Like we can, like, people have they call them the clairs, of like your extrasensory perceptions, all of us, they're turning on more and more. And the code comes in. So when I was talking about the camping cup of like the multi-dimensional codes. So on that earth plane, maybe they're going to come in as like you might see a truck with like a sign on it, like, oh, like quantum leap or something, it's like, okay, that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the water like element, they come in a different way. When you go up to the ears are very closely associated with the pineal gland, and that
Okay.
whole, well, no, sorry. The pineal gland's the light codes. Sorry. The ears are very associated with the throat chakra and the sound code. So it's
Okay.
like when you're receiving information, like you can think of your chakras as like, if you're going into a skyscraper building and you take the elevator to these different floors, right? You get off on the floor, and like the throat chakra is like a portal, or like a certain frequency, certain codes come in to that bandwidth. So it's like when I was speaking and then you're hearing, like that's all through the sound codes and through the ether element. But a lot of these, and the thing that I tuned in to talk to you and to the Soulogy community about is like, really, I was like, I kept hearing like talk to people about how to talk to star codes, like teach people how to hear and see and interpret star codes for our talk.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of what you're hearing are these like,
Okay.
gamma frequencies, or there's like certain different spectrum of this energy that's pouring in. So some people can feel it in their bodies. Some people will hear, like, see things and like lights and codes. Like the sounds are like one.
They're one way for you to receive it.
And then some people have like, everyone has their own decoding language. I've heard like, way showers like Lisa Brown will talk about like, oh, I can hear the gamma waves, I can hear the plasma. Like she has her ears tuned to like hear the different frequencies. But I think, that's a lot of more of us are turning on to that, because we get those like, there's almost, it's not tinnitus, right? And everyone go get your ears checked if you want to. But like we're, Todd and I are talking about is like I've got that code. So like, then how do you interpret it? Like it's coming into your light body, like your soul, it's going like right, it can bypass the human understanding and the mental.
Exactly.
And it just goes right into your DNA. Like sound codes and light codes they're like layered on top of each other. Almost like, if you send electricity through a wire, that's going to be the electricity, but then there's a magnetic field around that. Like the Taurus is that magnetic field. So the sound codes go more in that, they're like kind of layered on top of the Taurus, if that makes sense. And then the next is like the light geometries.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, this is this is actually something that we need to expand on.
Yeah.
So we can collaborate again. I mean, there's like you said, we could talk for a long, long time, because I have that kind of curious mind, and you've got so much, like the Cosmo thing to me is, but right now the sound thing, and we can move on. But okay, so like the other night, I was coming back from this gathering we had, and Eddie Hensley came down. He came down and he was here. And so he came over to where I had the RV park, because someone's going to pick him up and he was going to leave, whatever. But anyway, so we hung out. But on the way over, now Eddie I'd known for a while, and I don't really know why I'm saying that. I don't know, that there's got to be some relevance to it.
Well, did you say I've been watching a lot of your shows? Is he the one that came to DJ?
Yes.
He said he's a DJ.
So I've known Eddie. I mean, we've done a couple of I mean, I've known Eddie for like 3 years.
Well, you're talking about him because he brought the sound codes to your gathering, because he was the DJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
So if you're there to code exchange at your gathering, and you go home, you've held the space for all those people to come. And then you like, that's in the ether field. Like when you're space holding, ether is the element that holds space for everything else. And then so that's you as Soulogy, and you as the poster of this event. And then you go home and hear things. Like it makes perfect sense to me, because like,
well, the thing was in that I remembered, when it's happened many, many times, but so we were driving back, and I love that explanation you gave me. That might be the totality of it. But what had happened was, because I'd never met Eddie, and we have a lot of mutual friends, and we're all going through a transition, and things have been said and all this, some of the mutual friends we have, like, maybe unfriended me and whatever, but none of that was brought up. That's not my point. My point is that we came together, and there was an immediate kind of integration, balance, equality. I mean, it was really cool. It was unspoken, and we just hung out, and we did the show and everything. Now we were coming back to where I had the RV park, and we were talking, and I don't even know what we were talking about, but it was pure truth. It was just, two guys just hanging out. And all of a sudden this tone came in that was very distinctive, compared to all the ones I've heard. It was very thick, and it was almost like a drone. And I was like, God, I wish I knew what it was saying, but I knew what it was saying was, almost like seeing 1111 or 5555. It was like you're in the right place, right time. You're getting a bunch of information, and like you said, it bypasses the brain and goes straight to the soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, so I wonder, is there some relationship between when they come in? I guess there is. I guess there would be then, right?
Sure. Some people are like eye on the Schumann resonance to like see what's going on there, and some people are like how it comes in. Some people are like watching earthquakes and volcano, we all have our roles to play, and like how the light, a super simplistic view of what ascension is like where our galaxy is, like the section of the universe, of the galaxy that our solar system is in, is very, some people call it the photon belt. Like it's a cosmic stream, and there's just like a lot of light codes. So if you go back to the Hindu, the yugas, that like idea of like we're in the golden age, or we're in this like dark section, you can see it really, I don't say simply, but like from just a pure like astronomical view, is like there's a section of the pathway that our solar system takes through the galaxy. There's sections of it that are more light encoded. And when we're ascension, planetary ascension is like we've been moving steadily into this like photon belt or light cosmic stream, and you can hear it. Some people can see it. Some people can sense it. Some people can, like, it's happening for all of humanity. It's happening for the planet. It's happening for all of humanity. Like the codes are showing up more and more.
Yeah.
So that, so when you say like, what do you hear? Like the thicker ones, like everything's going to come through in like some, it's like through dream state, through some people through visualization, some people through channeling, some people through, giving birth to beings, some people through all these different ways. And so my answer to you is like, when you're hearing things, like, it's like, you can tune in, you are receiving it, but if you want to do more work to like consciously receive it, like give yourself a little bit of space, just sort of relax into it and enjoy it.
And pull it up and talk to it. I've done that before, and sometimes I get information, sometimes I don't. So now, do you think that do you think that these different forms of communication, let's just call it that way, geometry, the light, the tones, do you think they're all going to integrate and kind of become like a collectively understood language, like, or like move away from talking? And I mean, what do you think is going to happen with that? I'm just curious.
I think it's already, it's
Yeah.
here, it's happening. Like so when I gave that, if you, on the base level, like the human communication and speech is happening, say that's, I don't know, more earth plane or so. But then like we get up to like the telepathic, you get into like, you just get the waves come through, like the codes are, it's like light, sound, energy is all the same. And so it's just like depends on which bandwidth you're going to listen to it or experience it. Does that make sense? Like a human speech has that all encoded in it. Music has it all. But I feel like it's not like a future thing.
Yeah,
it's a now
it's
thing.
here.
Yeah.
You're right. Like everything else. Now, I want to. You want to get into the cosmos a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask you. I know this is going to be a selfish question. Maybe it's not. Okay. I'm not. I probably learn half of what I know, and I can only retain like maybe 10% of it by what I read that you do, and maybe a couple other people. I like the way you present everything. One of the things I've noticed is over the last at least 2 years, for sure, in my travels, Orion, Aldebaran, Pleiades seem to be like in my face all the, like, it, especially at certain points, like coming here and having the opportunity and the blessing to be able to broadcast for 50 days and plug in the RV. But it's beautiful, beloved sister that I had just met, and I walk into the backyard and there they are, like I can now, and I'm not a stargazer, but I'm like, okay, there's Orion's belt. Directly to the right, it's going to be Aldebaran, which is the eye of Taurus, which, and I've done some research on it, which is watching the Pleiades. And I'm like, why are they always like, when I got to Hawaii, when we first got to Hawaii, they were right there. When we finally landed on this organic farm, they're like right there every night, every day. Is there, and I've done a little research on it. There seems to be some type of storyline or narrative involving Orion. Of course, a lot of people talk about the Orion Wars and all that, but I'm talking about like almost like a lineage. Is what's going on with Orion? If you know of anything, and we can move into different subjects, but Orion, Aldebaran's more like something I think that's personal, but Pleiades, like Orion and Pleiades. Pleiades always seems to be big, but do you know anything about this stuff?
I do a lot. That's fun
Good.
because like when I tuned in, I spent the hour before the show like tuning in and doing some meditation action, and Venus was like, it's like tell this story, and it ended. It was like Venus codes, but then it ended up with the Pleiades and a big talk about the Pleiades. So can I do the
let's hear
whole
it.
flow of it? It's not like
Yes,
long, but so because I've
do
been
it.
watching what you've been
Yes.
showing, asking other people, so I was like trying to anticipate what you might ask me. So from where we sit on Earth, the planets and the sun travel on a line in our sky that's called the ecliptic. So
Okay.
just a line in the sky, the path.
The
of
planets and the
sun.
sun, they travel on a ecliptic.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's, that word
I
always
got you.
trips people up. A line, a pathway. And so they move in relation to each other, and depending on the season. So the signs of the zodiac are the constellations that are along that line. So the sun travels through that each, at a 360-degree flow. So if it's winter, we're in one section of the zodiac. If it's spring, we're in another. When the planets conjunct each other, it's like they sort of, some of the ones that are closer to the sun and to us move faster than the ones that are far away, like Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter. Those are really slow moving planets. Mercury, Venus, Mars, closer to us, move faster around the sun and move faster in the sky in relation to each other. So a planetary conjunction is when like one of the planets like catches up to the other one, and then they're next to each other as we see them. So imagine you're in a planetarium and the sky is just a dome, black dome, and everything's moving in relation to you, right?
All right.
So these conjunctions, so why, like right now, Orion in our northern hemisphere, Orion is a winter constellation. I'm not sure when you got to Hawaii. It was around this time that year when you talked, but for now, right now, when the evening sky, because most of us are awake between like sunset and like midnight, say. So that's the part of the sky that talks to us the loudest because we're usually in our beds in the other section. But for sure, Orion's been like, it seems like extra like bright and talkative. It seems like it's like shining codes at us all the time, right? So Venus, I'll just say that Venus is doing a thing right now that I've been shown to pay attention to. So, I think a lot of the
you know what? That's another one. I just want to say that I noticed Venus, and you're right. I think
Venus is it. So Venus right now is an evening star. So after the sunset, you'll see like the bright star that you see first. That's Venus.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And Venus is actually like what I see it. Have you seen it like throwing diamond codes? Like it almost looks like it's these like
I've seen
lines.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's another one that's been there too. Now, when I saw it Tuesday, I saw a portal open up, but the first thing I saw was Venus.
Yeah.
And to your question, not just that night, but I can't really pinpoint it, but I'd say in the last few weeks, I noticed that it has, because I always know it's Venus. I'm like, oh, that's Venus, but I didn't even know how I knew it. But it has this diamond kind of thing going on.
Yep. Yeah. It's like a
what is that, and what did Venus tell you? Go ahead.
How long do we have?
I'm
going to call those diamond codes, like the Venus diamond codes. People that follow, anyone that's in sound healing knows who Tom Kenyon is, and he would call it the Hadon. Like it's a octahedron. It's two pyramids stacked on top of each other. It's a platonic solid. You don't have to know what any of that means, but
it's like a Merkaba, isn't it? Like two pyramids.
Yeah. So the Merkaba occurs when the octahedron like moves in relation to each other, and the double pyramid stack becomes a star.
Wow.
So, but anyway, so the Venus codes have been coming in really strong. And I feel like Venus right now is acting like this diamond light, like crystalline light. And it's like going up to others. So at the end of November, 2019, I had to write things down because I was like, I want the dates for Todd. November 24th to 26th. So Venus is doing this, like it's meeting up with all the other planetary bodies in the sky and sort of doing this, like, for lack of a better term, like diamond code activation for them. So the Thanksgiving, November 25th, 26th zone, 2019, it was Venus with Jupiter. And there's been a lot of crescent moons that go with these two. And then December, I'm just going to list them all out and then we'll talk about the important ones. So people like the Venus hit or met up with Saturn in the sky around December 10th.
I remember that.
And then the Venus moon, the crescent moon conjunction, December 28th. A lot of people felt that one and talked about like, that was like there's something about the way Venus sat and the crescent moon that like opened up this complete diamond code portal.
Yeah, that was
And that's
that was
what
a
started for me.
yeah.
The Venus was like,
Yeah.
knock, 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 Julie, pay attention. So
Yeah, a lot of people you know, I'm just thinking back, but I want to say Rick Jewers, Franco, you know, Jason Estes. I mean, a lot of people that, you know, I think Rick Jewers actually specifically either the 26th or the 28th. But anyway, yeah, that was a very powerful, that was like almost like a threshold was crossed, it seems
for
like.
sure. And it kind of changed, you know, and then we had just had the eclipse, which is a whole nother top. That's a whole nother show, the eclipse show, but that had happened on the 26th.
Okay.
So there's like a lot of solar eclipse that you could see in Asia to Australia. And we could talk about that and like all the fires that have happened in Australia. Like solar eclipses are huge.
So what is Venus is knocking on your door? What
Yeah.
is Venus up now? It's what, 6 weeks later
Yeah.
or whatever, but what's going on?
Well, so I think, so one thing to know about Venus is, so most of the planets spin clockwise. Venus is the one planet that spins counterclockwise. And if you want to talk about like quantum action, like one way to think of the planets and the solar system is almost like a molecule that has 8 electrons.
Okay.
And like, it's interesting, like the code of life, you talk about like, we all breathe oxygen. Oxygen is the 8 electron. Like it's the, like, so there's something about that putting into human terms, putting into human words, like Venus is going to the different planets as I see it. And like, she's spinning like opposite of, like, it's a quantum spin rate thing, recalibration, the best thing I have for it. But that, so it's like, she'll like, it's going to each planet and like making this opening of the codes from the planets to like stream down. So part of what like gatekeeping is a lot of things. We hear that term a lot, right? It's like even just bringing your awareness to like what the stars or what the planets, like the light codes that are coming to the earth and to humanity and to all our creatures here, like into your DNA, into your field. But that's a whole, again, another whole nother show. So
There's a lot of other
Venus
shows
and
in this conversation.
Neptune. So Venus is doing like this thing with each planet, and I'm noticing as I was writing it down for you, it's like at the end of each month. So at the end of November, she did a thing with, I was to call her she. She's a hermaphrodite, really. He, she. Venus sat with Jupiter in our sky and the crescent moon, and then Venus sat with Saturn mid-December, and then the Venus and moon thing, and now Venus and Neptune at the end of January. That was a really big one. I did write up an article about that because there's something about the Venus Neptune thing, and they're like, there's a whole thing that happened then. And now the next one, because February is a little bit of a shorter month, it switches like to the calendar, the beginning of the calendar month. So Venus is going to meet with Uranus in March 7th ish, you know, that zone. It's not like it happens on one day, right? They're like, so if you see, like, you see them in the sky, and then they're like, the conjunctions are when they're near each other. And that whole conjunction junction, what's your function? It's like,
I remember that.
like,
so
like,
I mean,
like they go together, and they're the planets themselves are code exchanging in the sky, and then like, you know, so if you look at your natal chart, it's like, it's sacred geometry of where they are.
Yeah,
this is a Pleiades question though. Let me do one more. I'll take it.
Go ahead.
So then so Venus, then what I saw, like when I tuned in at the beginning of the year to like, what am I supposed to be paying, you know, what is my highest service? What am I supposed to be paying attention to for planetary ascension this year, right? It was this Venus stuff, and to really pay attention. And then, so the Venus, then its next journey, it's going to catch up to the Pleiades. It's entering the constellation of Taurus at the end of March. Okay. And there's a crescent moon, and then Venus is like marching through Taurus, and it goes near the Pleiades, and between the Pleiades and the Hyades, another cluster, and then over to your buddy Aldebaran. And it's like, it's just creating this activation as I see it to each of these. And what's cool for us is it's so bright, like just from a simple point of view, like we'll look up at the sky, we'll look at Venus, it's near Pleiades, boom, we've made the gateway because we're noticing it.
Yeah, let's go to Pleiades next, but I want to go back a little bit more general for people like me, but it almost sounds like, because I look at the stars and I think, you know what, how do I know? I question everything. So I'm like, how do I know that's not just an overlay? how do I know that that's not some kind of, whatever? But at the end of the day, I know it's a cookie crumb trail home, and it's got something to do. It helps us. This has gone on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But the Venus thing in 2020, to me, I mean, it's like, okay, well, why is Venus? But what's happening right now? Like the feminine power is like making its final, women are getting elected to prime ministerships, and there's all kinds of stuff happening. I mean, I don't know. And you said it's a hermaphrodite, but I've always associated, well,
Well,
so many, I guess,
yeah.
people. Yeah, well, true. That's
Well,
true.
the Venus Mars male female thing gets.
So Venus, I mean, so what's your take on that, and then into the Pleiades?
So one of the cool things about the Pleiades, if you study every ancient, so one of the most watched, most observable, most exciting thing in the nighttime sky for humanity and back into ancient cultures. So if you talk to someone who grew up in the Himalayan region of India, they call them the Kritas. If you talk to someone in Egypt, they're the Hathors. If you talk to, like, everyone has their tail. If you go to indigenous cultures near Wyoming, they have their, like Devil's Towers. But all the tales talk about humans, 7 sisters, 7 whatever, sometimes brothers, seven young people who become stars to become like saved. Like it's like a story of ascension. It's like you become, it's like you could decode it as turning on your Merkaba, turning on your star body. Like the tales are all like, say take the one here in North America, from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that like scratchy tower he was drawing. Devil Tower. It's like the tales are that these 7 sisters were being chased by a bear, and the claw marks on the side of the tower of the bear like coming after them, but instead of letting the bear kill them, they became stars. And that same tale is told through lots of indigenous cultures throughout the globe.
Yeah, and they also, and if I'm not mistaken, the Maori, we've had Hone Edmonds on here, and I believe Huna talked about it, Huna Flash. There's another tribe, I can't remember if it's in South America or Africa, but they talk about Pleiades. In other words, like Pleiades had a really huge hand in the origination of the species here, something like that. That they came, that the Pleiadians came and lived with the early civilizations and stuff like that. So there's some type of, I don't know. To me, Pleiades seems like if we turn around and look back, so to speak, like Pleiades would be the closest thing to us. I mean, that's kind of how I.
Well, that's that's true. See, you're like just a natural astrophysicist without because if we're where you live in a,
I thought I was Grandmaster Funk.
I can tell you that as an intro. You're all things. So we live in a barred spiral galaxy, which means we have like a central bar and then all these like spirals that come off of it. We're in the Orion spiral arm. And so the things you talk about, the Pleiades are like, so if the code of life is coming from the center of the galaxy and it's dispersed, and our sun is like a projector that's it's like a station along the way, it's like rebroadcasting the code of life so we can be alive here.
So it's like the central.
So it's like the next thing up our Orion arm, or the Pleiades are really close to us, like geographically in galactic terms. And the Orion, so one of the reasons you asked about Orion, we haven't even talked about that. So the Orion arm, like we're in the Orion spur or the Orion arm of the galaxy. So the things that I hear from in the night sky, when I had this realization, I was like, oh, like I looked at like the Pleiades, the Hyades, the Orion constellation itself are like, they're our galactic neighbors. They're like closer to us. So maybe we can hear them better because they can talk louder because they're,
it's just like,
they're in our neighborhood.
Yeah, it's really weird.
But they're also portals, like when people like even if you think of like the codes, there are like beings, like they're portals that light beings can come through.
Yeah.
So, if be it like Sasquatch or be it like giant race or that kind of thing, but they're even more simple, like the stars like turn on, you ask like how they bypass the human brain. It's like your stuff, like the stuff that's in your DNA like your codons, like the stars turn our inner codes on in our inner space, like the star light. Like you might have part of your DNA is all we are, you know, star stuff, as Joni Mitchell taught us long ago. Like the actual particles of carbon-based life form were created in stars far, far away. So
Yeah.
you and I can talk about light beings and like portals and that stuff, but we could also go talk to the astronomers. Like they can't debunk the fact that the carbon molecules that make my DNA were
One and the
on
same.
stars. So like they listen to, you know, they listen to each other. Like light codes is really
Yeah.
happening at a DNA
Yeah,
level.
it's interesting too because of what you said about that the oral history, you know, with the seven sisters, you know, eluding the bear and becoming stars. But then it's like the reverse is true, which is how the universe, to me, always ends up. It's a paradox. So, like, well, as within, without, right? Like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, it's fascinating. It's some kind of cycle or circuit
Well,
that's
that's,
beyond our former level of comprehension because now we're becoming multidimensional. But
yeah,
yeah,
cool. Because descension and ascension are happening at the same time. Like
yeah.
that is
So
really what the Merkaba is, or like Kundalini awakening. If you go like to the there's source codes pouring in and down, and there's us. And like part of what ascension is like all of us turning on purpose and like actively like reaching up to meet. And like
yeah,
that's one way to look at the Merkaba too. It's like those two pyramids that make the Taurus, they interlock and like, and then your light codes
yeah.
turn on and you start. But the other thing about the Pleiades, just from a like anthropology wise, like looking back to like the like human races, like how it's coded in our DNA to watch the Pleiades, is the a lot of cultures, especially like Mesoamerica and Mediterranean, the heliacal rising of the Pleiades was like a time of like springtime and like planting crops. And
Yes.
so the heliacal, for people like when, so I talk about the sun moving along the ecliptic, when the sun like moves close to, we can't see stars during the day. So when a sun is like gobbled up by a star is gobbled up by sunlight, it's like they're together, we can't see them. So the times where the last time we can see the star set before it moves into the helios space of the sun, just that was like, oh, okay, that used to be because of the precession of the equinoxes, a whole nother show, that used to be more around spring equinox where the Pleiades would like rise. So it was time like, so seafaring Mediterranean cultures, like, you know, the Crete Islands or whatnot, they would decide like, oh, it's safe to go out to the Atlantic now because
Yeah.
you can see the Pleiades
Well,
again. A
that
lot of
was
these stone
their
chambers
yeah,
are like designed as like these ancient telescopes. Like a lot of what I was taught a lot of this by is I have a beehive stone chamber a couple miles from my house. That's like an archaeoastronomy. They don't quite know who built it. You know, we can have a lot of talk
paleontology.
about that. But
I
like,
mean,
it's maybe that like their one theory is that you would sit in the middle of this chamber and the tunnel, it would make your eyes be able to see things like darker. You know, it make the sky darker so you could see these settings, and like it's set to like,
oh, inside the structure.
yeah.
So, wow, you have done like massive amounts of multiple field, multiple, you know, categories research and stuff. So, okay, let's go back now. So, in general, okay, a lot of times we don't get into the subjects that you might find in some of the alt news, you know, programs that are out there that people know about. But I'm just kind of just to get an overview for one, at least one time. People talk about this 26,000 year cycle,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I often wonder, you know, because it gets thrown around so much by some prominent people. I'm not taking shots at anybody, but you know, you can read about it in sacred texts. You can read about a lot of stuff. All right. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not really convinced anybody's ever downloaded it, you know, Nibiru and, you know, and whatever, you know, whatever. Is there, what is the age of Aquarius? What is going on? You know, you talked about the precession of the equinoxes. I mean, that's part of it. I understand that part of it, even as a beginner. But in general, it, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is the planetary movements and alignment, the precession of the equinoxes, where we're at, moving in the age of Aquarius. This stuff is just happening, period. Maybe we need, and this is kind of a weird question, but maybe we need to chill out a little bit. Not that we don't need to do inner work and shadow work and this and that, but like the ascension's happening,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
this is a cycle.
yeah,
And for my own curiosity, is there validity? It doesn't really matter one way or the other, but is there validity to this 26,000 years thing? I
yeah.
mean, do you
So
feel
that's
that's
for
credible?
sure. Um, that cycle I was talking about, and moving into different bands of, so the solar system in the galaxy, I was talking about that we're in the spiral galaxy,
Mhm.
20, that it's between 24,000 and 26,000. It varies, it fluctuates. That's
Mhm.
how long it takes our solar system to orbit around. It takes our Earth 365-ish days to orbit around the sun. It
Okay.
takes our solar system 25,000-ish years to orbit around the center of the galaxy.
Okay.
And that's what that
So
is.
yeah, here we go
So
with
the
the
age, the epics, or the age, like there's an age of Taurus, there's an age of Pisces, there's an age of Aquarius, that is set by where the sun rises on that ecliptic at spring
okay.
equinox.
So in the age of Sagittarius, that's when we were all heathens, and that's when Sodom and Gomorrah happened. I'm a Sagittarius. I just wanted to make that joke.
Yeah, sure. I have a
Uh,
Sagittarius daughter.
yeah, God help you. So Jake Borchert, he asked this question, and I just happened to see this the other day because we went through that. What was it like, the blood moons? I mean, we went through like what, like an 18 months of like intense, even for someone like me who doesn't pay attention, intense eclipses. But I read this the other day, and he brought it up. Do the four super moons this year have any significant relevance? Let me just reword it. What's the relevance of the super moons this year? Or do you know?
um, I'm
Or are they just,
sure they do have relevance.
yeah,
I haven't been
that's okay. I just,
tuning into as much, like what, like,
yeah.
do they have
Now let
relevance?
me let me ask you. Let's change direction. So
No, like what the super moons. Yeah, like we could
no,
talk about moon energy, but that's like,
well, no. Let's keep this. Let's
okay.
just keep making it up as we go. So now you've done a tremendous amount of research, obviously, since you were a weird little kid. Okay. And, now you're playing these weird beehive things or whatever, but no, seriously. So, but you mentioned several times, and I know you personally, all right, about tapping in. How much of the stuff you put out, and there's no right or wrong answer, I'm just curious, how much of the stuff you put out is from tapping in and how much is from research? And has it changed over the years?
Yes, yes. Like intuitive research based on tapping
Yes.
in. Like, so,
Okay, I
as
got you.
you talk about,
I
like the
yeah.
star codes. Like you'll,
Mhm.
like one night I was out, and like the Hyades was maybe the first like asterism or constellation that, like, the stars started like moving in the sky in relation to each other. They were
Mm.
like, I was like, was that my eye? Like, what exactly is happening? This is like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it did like open up this whole inquiry of like, how are the stars talking, like stars, like star speak and star
Yes.
code
Yeah.
talking. So it's not like, say like stars tell me things, like it's listening, like for like full body, full
Yeah,
field
but I mean,
listening, like they turn
tapping
things
in,
on. Yeah,
yeah. So tapping in can be, having a conversation with a star, can be, I'm just saying non-traditional, let's put it that way, 3D-ish kind
yeah,
of research. So I guess what I'm getting at is, I think for a lot of people, and this is very interesting because you have a lot of both, experience in both ends of it. The traditional textbook kind of thing, and then the tapping in. So because a lot of people, I love the way you put it. You go into intuitive research as a result of the tapping in,
yeah,
and I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's interesting because I question everything, even in myself or whatever. And so you get stuff come in. I had some stuff like this over the since last night come in, And so I did some research, and I love the way you put it, because it was intuitive research. The next thing I know, I'm listening to a Dolores Cannon, and she's talking about the subjects that I tapped into, or that were, you know what I mean? And then a couple other things happen. But it's interesting because there is some validity to that intuitive research that is predicated by the tapping in. And but there also seems to be an kind of a transition or an evolvement where we're moving more and more and more into the intuitive and tapping in, and less the textbook.
Yeah, do you
You
want
know
a
what I mean?
tangible example of something that happened to me recently? And it goes
Yeah.
with Venus too. So I've just been seeing whales, like pictures, like I've been hearing whales. So whales kind of go, so one, like everyone that we would speak to out there is really in here. It's sort of like the Superman in the Fortress of Solitude, putting the crystals in, you know, it's like crystal, like if, and then, you know, his father like would appear as astral. That for us, like I can say I've been talking to the Hathors, which I do, but like that's just an aspect of me that I'm turning on the codes on to like listen to
Yes.
myself, you know, so I'm not like
Yes. Thank you.
channeling. It's like you're talking to your different aspects. Some people call them soul
Exactly.
aspects. To me, they're,
Exactly.
if you think of like the 12 strands of the DNA, like you can just shine a little light onto each one and you can get these, like you can get like projections, but it's all you. Well, you know, we're on the same
Of
page there.
course. Yeah.
So I was just seeing whales, and like whales go a lot with sound codes, you know, and they're like talking, they've just been showing up, you know, they'll show up in my news feed. They'll show up like, just like whales, 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 whales. I was like, okay, guys, what's, so for, you know, sometimes it'll happen with like swans, hawks, turkey vultures,
Yeah.
like for me, like
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a shamanic way that the animals that will show up here on planet Earth. And then to me, I've learned or I've tuned myself to realize like, oh, when I first started, like the swans were the first one that showed me this, because I was with the swans, and I was like, oh, there's a swan constellation, like Cygnus. I'm supposed to be listening more to the swan stars too. So anyway, the whales, like I was like, why are we hearing the whales so much? And then I looked on I use Sky Safari as an app on my phone. And so I looked up, I was like, oh, Venus right now, like Cetus is a sea monster / whale constellation, but Venus is like kind of cruising along the back of the whale right now. I was like, oh, that's why I can hear like, so
Mm.
the Hathors are, it's like just tune and sound codes, and they were really, I think, the ones that seeded. I talked about the Sanskrit language at the beginning. Like I've been talking to them for a few years, or talking to myself as Hathor for a few years. So that
Yeah.
like sound code people, it's like, oh, the whales, we're supposed to be like listening to the whales, learning from the whales, hearing from the whales. And then you can like put it up into like, you know, being a gatekeeper of star codes is like following it all the way up into the galaxy. Does that
Yeah.
make any sense? And then I'll like look
Absolutely.
up, so then I read about that constellation, and then I'm like, oh, Messier 77. There's another spiral galaxy that we can see in that constellation. And maybe my like job as a galactic gatekeeper that day is just to like read about that barred spiral galaxy. But I was like, oh, it's sort of like, and then just tune the energy between the Milky Way and
I totally get what you're saying. I don't want to run out of time, because I want to make
yeah,
sure
yeah,
that we get some. We just got a few minutes, but I want to make sure that we get all your information, what you're doing, and there's no doubt. I mean, like we should. Well, you know, I'm going to talk to Morgan. We should get together if you're open to it. You know, every few weeks, and really go deep into some of this stuff, because it's fascinating. Number one, and it brings up a lot of other things to me. Like what you're talking about, everything that is presented in front of you, that comes to you through intuitive research, through tapping in, and all other methods, is you. I love that you said that. I mean, these experiences is, you know, I get a little bit, and I've been there. We've all been there. When we first wake up and something comes to you, you're like, oh, well, you know, that's separate from me, but it's really not, right? It's me. But anyway, what I was getting at is that, that's an important point to make, that, there's just so much involved in that statement, and understanding humility, gratitude, reverence, honor, further awareness of your own field and power and capabilities. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, you're a scientist. So you are a scientist that says everything I'm working with is me, and I can communicate with anything and everything because it is me. I just got to find the way, so to speak, or follow the yellow brick road or the cookie crumb trails or whatever. Does that resonate with you? And do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, that's like some of us are code readers, or code writers, code speakers. It's like the codes. You learn more and more how to interpret them in your own field. And but yeah, that fact of like, and it's fine to like, I think a lot of people start as like channeling. It's like fine to start with thinking like it's coming from out there, but like when you really turn on that, like, oh no, that's my, whatever you want to call it, like my soul aspect projection. And then you know, I Andara crystals. We didn't even get into that. That's enough. But like I use them a lot in
You
bringing in
do.
code. Yeah.
I'm curious with the Andaras. There's been so much talked about the Andaras. I wish we had more time. Uh,
Well, I would
how does somebody?
like talking to you often is like very exciting. Like, because I do have all this knowledge and like it just I share it as
Well,
much as I can.
we're gonna have, yeah, we're gonna have to. The accident. I'll talk to Morgan. I can. I know this is in alignment. Now, I wanted to ask you a quick question because a lot of people have. Yeah, I know this has come up a lot, and I guess I'll just throw it at you. How do you know an Andara is an Andara versus not an Andara? Because there's been a lot of discussion about that, and I don't know if it's just fear programming or whatever, but I know a few people that work with Andaras, but you seem to be very, very close to them.
Yeah. When there's distortion in the field around them, which I don't really play in that, like that,
Yes.
that communication. Like they speak directly to me as you do, not like in human words, but they're it's almost like if they are like that whole, like if it is glass, great, then we can all like find glass and like they work. Whatever they do, they work.
Yeah, that's
I
that's
don't really care.
you know what?
It's like Velveteen Rabbit real. If you
Yeah,
want them to
that's
be real,
what
they
yeah,
work
and
for
this is
me and they're real.
yeah, and this is what intrigues me because I was kind of talking on the subject in the previous show, but like using a different example. But so like that's what Morgan says, right? Like when we came across this issue, I don't know, a year ago, whatever, and she's like, "Well, you know what? The point is, it's all the same substance at the end of the day, right? Like everything that you work with is the same substance, but it is interesting how whether it be past life memories, future life memory progression, whatever, a certain connection we have to a star family or divine essence, how these things are kind of like taking on a different light now because they all are us. It's kind of weird. I feel it's weird at night because I'm wondering, okay, who am I talking to? Me?
Glass is gonna help me bring if this hunk of glass is gonna help me bring codes in, then who is it
Right.
to someone else to say? Like
That's right.
they are communicative, active.
Yeah.
And we can all
Well,
use the methods we use.
well, they're
I could
certainly
use like
very
a horn and a stick.
yeah.
But they're like star codes.
There's
That's a
yeah.
whole topic. Like I've had light beings, like
Mm.
they're like come through. They walk through them on
Yeah.
Dharas. Like they're
Well,
sentient
they're
beings.
certainly very prominent in their in at least from my beginner standpoint, they seem to be very unique, almost like in a separate class in all the other crystals. So, there's certainly something behind it, where there's smoke, there's fire. So, yeah, they got to have, there's a reason for that consciousness to be at the level it's at, I guess is what I'm saying. Now, we have a show in 7 minutes and I've got to take a potty break. So, but I want to know, and I definitely want, if you're open to it, I definitely want to, plan some future collaborations every few weeks and do, some specific stuff like this. I mean, this was kind of general, but we could get into some specific stuff because I think people would be very interested in it. I think it's important. Plus, you have a nice blend of science and spirituality. You know what I mean? So I love that, and you're down to earth and all that. But how do people find you? And do you have anything going on that you want to tell people about and invite people to and that type of thing?
Yeah. So I'm on Facebook, Julie Dhara Roberts. I have Inner Space, a page. It's called Inner Space. I'm in Massachusetts, like Todd said, near Boston, and but Central Mass. So I have a center here. I work with people. I do one-on-one, like both in person and Zoom. energy aligning, sound code. We're all moving away from the term healing. Like I'll hold space for people to space. I have a whole, it's that time of year again to turn it on. Like I have a whole team of a Pleiadian team of Andaras. So last spring I was doing like Pleiadian, like connecting people with Pleiadian star family using my Andara team. I have a lot of stuff on my website. So my website is innerspacehealing.org. And then I have another website because have so much stuff on each. I have soulplanet.org, which is a lot of my, like, kind of my tales of grid working and grid keeping and gatekeeping. And I am going to be running another one of the Sanskrit, like turn yourself on to be your own sound healer, code master, like working with the Sanskrit alphabet and the sacred geometries of each chakra.
Well, based on a couple of these comments, some people hadn't seen you before. I think it'd be a good idea if you put your links in the comments. You know, I really enjoyed it. I feel, well, you know, we can't look back, but I wish we would have done some stuff, you know, since the last time. But I can see, you know what, it's divine timing. So, but I really appreciate what you do and what you're doing, what you've been doing, and I really would like to collaborate. We'd like to collaborate with you in the future, you know, every now and then, and bring some of these subjects to the surface and have it specific to the show, you know, instead of bouncing all over the place.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So
let's be in touch.
Thanks
everybody for
you take care.
Tuning in. Love you, Todd. Thanks.
Right on. Best to you and your family.